Okay, we're going to talk about problems that ask you to factor out the greatest common factor, sometimes referred to as factor completely. So we need to find the greatest common factor by writing all factors of the terms, then factor it out and look at what's left. And we write it where we have the greatest common factor on the outside, what's left, plus or minus depending on what sign's in the middle, and what's left in the other term. So it sounds a lot more confusing than it is. So if I look at 6x to the third, y to the fourth, and 2xy. So greatest common factor. First I look at the coefficient 6 and think about what goes into 6. Well, 1, 2, 3, and 6 all go into 6. Then I think about, okay, x to the third means x times x times x. Y to the fourth means y times y times y times y. On the bottom 2, there's only two factors of 2, and that's 1 and 2. And then I have x and I have a y. So the greatest common factor goes on the outside. So the greatest number they have in common is 2. The greatest number of x's they have in common is 1. And the greatest number of y's they have in common is 1. So the greatest common factor is 2xy. So that goes on the outside of the parentheses. Then I have to look at what's left. Well, 2 times what gives me 6? Well, that's 3. How many x's do I have left? 1, 2, so that's x to the second. I have 1, 2, 3 y's left, so that's y to the third. There was a plus sign in the middle, so I got a plus sign. Now 2 times what gives me 2? Well, that's 1. And there's no x and there's no y left over. So then my factored answer is 2xy times 3x squared y to the third plus 1. Second example, 14x to the fourth y to the fifth minus 7xy. So I got 14x to the fourth y to the fifth and 7xy. So my factors of 14 are 1, 2, 7, and 14. X to the fourth is like 4 x's. Y to the fifth is like 5 y's. On bottom, 1 times 7 gives me 7, and then I have 1 x and 1 y. So the greatest number they both have is 7. They both have 1 x in common, and they both have 1 y in common. So my greatest common factor is 7xy. And then 7 times what gives me 14? Well, that's 2. How many x's do I have left over? 3, so x to the third. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 y's, so y to the fourth. Minus sign in the middle. 7 times what gives me 7? Well, that's 1. And I don't have any x's or y's left over. Example 3, 14x squared y to the third plus 4xy. So I got 14x squared y to the third and 4xy. Well, again, the numbers that go into 14 are 1, 2, 7, and 14. X squared is x and x, and y to the third is 3y's. Numbers that go into 4, 1, 2, and 4. Then I have 1x and 1y. So the greatest number they have in common is 2. Again, they both have 1x and 1y in common. So my greatest common factor is 2xy. 2 times what gives me 14, and that's 7. I only have 1x left over, so I just put x. I have 2 y's left over, so that's y squared. Plus sign in the middle. 2 times what gives me 2, and that's 1, and again I have nothing left over to use here. So I get 2xy times 7xy squared plus 1. Example 4, 24x to the fourth y to the sixth minus 3x squared y. So again, 24x to the fourth y to the sixth and 3x squared y. So numbers that go into 24, there's a lot of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 8, 12, and 24. And then x to the 4th. And then y to the 6th. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Numbers that go into 3 are just 1 and 3. X squared means x and x, and then 1y. So here I have a 3 in common with each of them. This time I've got 2 x's that I could factor out, and then 1y. So my greatest common factor here is 3. Since I have 2 x's, it's x squared, 1y. Well, 3 times what gives me 24, and that's 8. How many x's do I have left over? Well, x squared, because I have 2 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 y's, so y to the 5th, minus 3 times what gives me 3, and that's 1, and again I have nothing left over.